What if I told you that most of your stress, anxiety, and overthinking aren't caused by your circumstances but by your own mind? Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph Nguyen reveals a simple but life-changing truth: suffering isn't about what happens to you, it's about how much you engage with your thoughts. This book isn't just about thinking positive, it's about thinking less, letting go of the mental noise that keeps you stuck, and finally experiencing the peace that's been there all along. By the end of this video, you'll learn how to stop overanalyzing, trust your intuition, and find clarity without effort. If you've ever felt trapped in your own head, this might just be the perspective shift you need. Imagine this: you're sitting in a coffee shop, sipping your drink, and watching the world go by. But inside your head, it's chaos. You're overanalyzing a conversation from last night, stressing about a deadline, wondering if you're doing enough with your life. Meanwhile, the person at the next table is completely at peace, smiling, enjoying the exact same moment. Same coffee shop, same environment, two completely different realities. Why? Because reality isn't about what's happening outside of us. It's about what's happening inside our minds. That's exactly what Joseph Nguyen explores in Don't Believe Everything You Think. The book flips the script on a belief most of us have had our entire lives, that our thoughts are real and that they define us. We tend to assume that happiness comes from controlling our circumstances, fixing our flaws, or achieving some ideal version of life. But what if the real secret to happiness isn't about changing anything except how much we believe the thoughts in our own heads? Nguyen argues that our suffering doesn't come from the outside world, it comes from our own thinking. And not just any thinking, but the unnecessary, overanalyzed, self-critical thoughts we engage with constantly. The endless what-ifs, the comparisons, the self-doubt. That voice in your head that tells you you're not doing enough, not good enough, not safe enough to relax and just be. But here's the wild part: that voice. It's not real. It's just thoughts. And thoughts only have power if we choose to believe them. Think about the last time you were truly happy. Maybe it was laughing with friends, listening to your favorite song, or watching a sunset. In those moments, were you thinking about happiness? Or were you just experiencing it? Chances are, your mind was quiet. You weren't analyzing the moment, you were just in it. That's what Nguyen is getting at: peace doesn't come from thinking positive, but from thinking less. So how do we get there? How do we stop believing everything we think? That's what this book is all about. Nguyen doesn't just tell you to be positive or stop worrying. He gives you a completely new way to see the mind. He breaks down the difference between thoughts, which naturally arise, and thinking, which is when we start attaching meaning, judgment, and stress to those thoughts. And he offers a radical idea: you don't need to replace negative thoughts with positive ones. You just need to stop engaging with them altogether. This book is an invitation to challenge everything you believe about happiness, success, and peace of mind. It's not about fixing yourself, it's about realizing you were never broken to begin with. If you've ever felt stuck in your own head, constantly chasing peace but never quite finding it, this might just be the shift in perspective you need. Now, let's dive deeper into the core ideas of this book, starting with the biggest truth of all: suffering isn't caused by life. It's caused by our thinking about life. If suffering isn't caused by life itself but by our thinking about life, then the next logical question is, how do we stop suffering? How do we actually apply this idea in real life when stress, fear, and overthinking feel automatic? That's what Don't Believe Everything You Think breaks down, and the answers might surprise you. First, let's talk about the biggest misconception of all: the idea that external events create our emotions. We tend to believe that if something bad happens, we have to feel bad. If someone criticizes us, we have to feel hurt. If we don't have the money, the relationship, or the job we want, we have to feel anxious. But is that actually true? Imagine two people in the same situation, say, getting stuck in traffic. One person is raging, cursing under their breath, gripping the steering wheel like they can somehow force the cars to move. The other person is calm, listening to music, using the time to reflect. Same traffic, totally different experience. What's the difference? They're thinking about the situation. This is the core of the book. We don't suffer because of what happens. We suffer because of what we think about what happens. Once you see that, the next step is recognizing the difference between thoughts and thinking. Thoughts are natural. They pop up automatically, like notifications on your phone. But thinking? Thinking is when you choose to open the notification, engage with it, and spiral down a rabbit hole. Let's say you have a thought like, "I'm not good enough." That thought by itself is harmless. But the moment you start thinking about it, "Why do I always feel this way? I'll never be successful. Other people have it figured out, what's wrong with me?" Suddenly, that one thought turns into a storm of self-doubt. The key isn't to fight those thoughts. It's to recognize that you don't have to believe them. You can just let them pass. Now, a common question comes up: if we only feel what we're thinking, does that mean we need to start thinking positive all the time? Not exactly. See, this is where most self-help advice goes wrong. You don't need to force yourself to think positively, you just need to stop engaging with the thoughts that make you suffer. Think about the times you felt truly joyful. Were you sitting there telling yourself, "Okay, I need to think positive thoughts right now"? Of course not. You were just present, experiencing life directly. Joy, love, peace, these aren't things you create by thinking about them. They're what naturally exist when you stop overthinking. That brings us to something radical. If thinking is the problem, what happens when we stop thinking? This idea might sound weird at first, but it's something you've probably already experienced. Think about when you're in the zone, whether you're playing a sport, making music, painting, or just fully absorbed in a great conversation. In those moments, you're not overanalyzing every move, you're just doing. That's what athletes call being in the flow, and what Zen masters call mushin, the state of no mind. It's when you're fully present, not caught up in endless internal dialogue. And ironically, it's in this state when we're not thinking that we perform at our best, make the best decisions, and feel the most alive. But wait, if we stop thinking, what happens to our goals, dreams, and ambitions? Won't we just sit around and do nothing? This was one of the biggest fears the author had when he first realized that thinking was the cause of suffering. He worried that without constant goal setting and analysis, he'd lose motivation and become directionless. But what he found was the opposite. When you stop thinking out of desperation, you start creating out of inspiration. Most people set goals because they're trying to escape something: financial insecurity, loneliness, self-doubt. They think achieving X will finally make them feel happy or secure. But that kind of motivation is stressful and empty. When you stop overthinking, goals don't disappear. They just shift. Instead of chasing things to fill a void, you create because it feels good to create. You write, you build, you dream, not because you need something to be different, but because you're inspired to bring something new into the world. The same goes for love and relationships. So many of us seek love as a way to feel complete. We think, if I find the right person, I'll finally feel secure. But real love isn't about finding someone to complete you. It's about sharing your natural state of love with someone else. The author shares a story about his girlfriend that really drives this home. He used to ask her why she loved him, and she always said, "I don't know, I just do." That answer frustrated him. He had a long list of reasons why he loved her: her kindness, her laughter, her intelligence. But then he realized something: if love is based on reasons, it's conditional. If you love someone because they're kind, what happens if they have a bad day and aren't kind? Does your love disappear? Real love isn't about reasons. It's about being. It doesn't come from thinking, it comes from the absence of thinking. So let's tie all of this together. If suffering comes from thinking, and happiness is what naturally exists when we stop overthinking, then the way to peace isn't about adding more, it's about removing what's unnecessary. It's not about controlling thoughts, but about learning to not engage with them. It's about realizing that you don't need to fix yourself, because you were never broken in the first place. Now, this might sound simple, but it's not always easy. Our minds have been trained to overanalyze, to chase, to compare. Letting go of that can feel unnatural at first. But the next time you feel anxious or stressed, try this: pause. Notice what thought is causing that feeling. And instead of diving into it, just ask yourself, what if I didn't engage with this thought? You might be surprised at what happens. Nguyen's message is clear: the moment you stop believing everything you think, you stop being controlled by your mind. And when you stop being controlled by your mind, you experience something incredible: freedom. So if peace, clarity, and happiness come naturally when we stop overthinking, how do we actually get there? How do we train ourselves to step out of the constant noise in our heads and into a state of ease? This isn't about forcing yourself to stop thinking. That would be like trying to fight quicksand, making yourself sink even deeper. Instead, the key is awareness. You can't fix what you don't notice. The moment you recognize that you're overthinking, you've already begun to detach from it. And the more you practice stepping back, the more space you create for something deeper, something beyond thinking. A simple way to start is by becoming an observer of your own mind. Most of us don't even realize how much we're thinking because it feels automatic. But the next time you catch yourself feeling anxious, ask yourself, what am I actually thinking right now? You might be stressing about an upcoming meeting, replaying a past mistake, or worrying about something completely out of your control. Instead of getting lost in it, just notice it like you're watching a passing cloud. No need to analyze it, change it, or argue with it. Just see it for what it is, a thought. And just like clouds, thoughts move on if you let them. Once you start noticing your thoughts, the next step is creating space for non-thinking. You've probably already had moments like this, times when your mind just quiets and you feel fully present. Maybe it happens when you're lost in a song, staring at the ocean, or even washing the dishes. The trick is to make more room for these moments. That could mean meditating, taking long walks without your phone, or simply doing things that bring you into a state of flow: painting, dancing, playing music. The activity itself doesn't matter. What matters is that, in those moments, you're not analyzing, overthinking, or controlling. You're just experiencing. And that's where peace lives. Now, you might wonder, if I stop thinking so much, how will I make good decisions? We're taught that the more we think, the smarter we are. But have you ever noticed that your best ideas don't come when you're forcing them? They come when you're in the shower, lying in bed, or taking a walk when your mind is clear. That's because wisdom isn't something you generate through effort. It's something that naturally arises when you're not drowning in thoughts. So the next time you're stuck on a big decision, instead of overanalyzing it, try stepping away. Let it breathe. Your intuition already knows the answer. You just have to give it space to speak. This shift in perspective also changes how we set goals. Most people set goals out of a feeling of lack. I need to make more money because I don't have enough. I need to be more successful so I can feel worthy. But when goals come from desperation, they create stress, not fulfillment. The alternative is setting goals from inspiration. Instead of asking, what do I need to achieve to feel better? Ask, what excites me? What do I feel naturally pulled toward? Inspired goals don't come with pressure. They don't feel like obligations. They feel like an extension of who you already are. And paradoxically, these are the goals we're most likely to achieve because they're fueled by joy, not fear. Finally, and maybe most importantly, we have to let go of judgment. Nothing is inherently good or bad, only our thinking makes it so. The next time you catch yourself labeling a situation as terrible, pause. Ask yourself, what if this isn't good or bad? What if it just is? This doesn't mean ignoring problems or pretending everything is perfect. It means recognizing that suffering doesn't come from the event itself, but from your interpretation of it. When you stop assigning meaning to everything, you free yourself from unnecessary pain. You stop being at war with life. And that's when real peace begins. The beauty of this entire process is that it's not about adding anything to your life. It's about removing what's unnecessary, the endless mental noise that keeps you stuck. You don't have to force happiness or chase success. You just have to step out of your own way. And when you do, you realize something incredible: everything you've been searching for has been here all along. You just needed to stop thinking long enough to see it. By now, this all sounds pretty freeing, right? If suffering comes from thinking and peace comes from not engaging with thoughts, then the answer is simple: just stop believing everything you think. But here's the catch: it's easy to understand this concept intellectually, but much harder to apply it in the moments when you're caught in a spiral of overthinking. That's where the biggest blind spot comes in. Most people, after learning about this idea, try to force themselves into a state of non-thinking. They treat it like another goal, like something to achieve, master, or perfect. But the moment you try to stop thinking, guess what happens? You start thinking even more. You start analyzing whether you're doing it right, judging yourself for slipping back into old habits, stressing about why you're not feeling instant peace. And suddenly, the whole thing becomes another mental trap. This is one of the biggest pitfalls: turning not thinking into just another thing to obsess over. But here's the truth: you don't have to do anything to reach a state of clarity. You just have to stop interfering with it. Think of it like a snow globe. When you shake it, the flakes swirl chaotically, making it impossible to see through the glass. But if you just leave it alone, the snow settles, and suddenly everything is clear. Your mind works the same way. If you're feeling anxious, lost, or overwhelmed, the worst thing you can do is fight it. Instead, step back. Let the snow settle on its own. Clarity isn't something you force, it's what naturally arises when you stop stirring up the mental storm. Another blind spot is that people assume this means they'll never feel negative emotions again. That if they just stop engaging with their thoughts, they'll be in a permanent state of bliss. But that's not how it works. You're still going to experience frustration, sadness, and even fear at times. The difference is, you won't attach to those feelings. You won't create stories around them. Imagine anger rising up in you. Instead of thinking, "Why do I always get so mad? I need to fix this. What's wrong with me?" you simply notice it. You allow it to come, and then just like a wave it passes. When you stop resisting emotions, they lose their grip on you. And here's another tricky one: some people take this idea and assume it means they should suppress their thoughts and feelings altogether. That they should try to stay in some zen-like state all the time, never reacting, never feeling deeply. But that's not freedom, that's avoidance. The goal isn't to become numb or indifferent. It's to experience life fully without getting trapped in the mind's constant storytelling. You're meant to feel joy, sadness, excitement, and even heartbreak. But when you stop overthinking, you experience those emotions without being controlled by them. The final blind spot is that people assume this won't work for them. They hear all of this and think, "That sounds great, but my mind is too busy. My anxiety is too strong. My problems are different." But the thing is, that's just another thought. The moment you start thinking you're the exception, you're back in the trap. The truth is, no matter how overactive your mind is, the principles stay the same. Clarity, peace, and joy aren't earned. They're your default state. And the only thing between you and that state is your belief in thoughts that aren't real. So the next time you catch yourself spiraling, don't try to fight it. Don't try to force yourself into non-thinking. Just pause. Notice the thoughts. And then, do nothing. Let them pass like clouds in the sky. Because the more you see them for what they really are, just passing energy, not reality, the more you'll realize that you were free all along. If this book resonated with you, there are a few others that dive even deeper into these ideas. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle explores the same concept of detaching from thoughts and living fully in the present. The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer expands on how to let go of the mind's constant chatter and experience true freedom. And if you're curious about the deeper principles behind Nguyen's ideas, The Three Principles by Sydney Banks lays the foundation for understanding how our thoughts, consciousness, and mind create our experience of life. Each of these books offers a different perspective, but they all point to the same fundamental truth: peace isn't something you achieve, it's something you uncover when you stop believing everything you think. At the end of the day, Don't Believe Everything You Think isn't just a book, it's an invitation to see life differently. It's a reminder that we are not prisoners of our thoughts, and that true peace isn't found in controlling the outside world but in letting go of the mental noise inside us. Nguyen's message is simple but powerful: you don't have to fix yourself, overanalyze your problems, or force happiness. The moment you stop believing every thought that pops into your mind, you create space for something deeper: clarity, joy, and a kind of freedom that can't be taken away by circumstances. So as you go about your day, try this: the next time a stressful thought shows up, don't fight it, don't argue with it, just notice it and let it pass. Because the truth is, happiness was never something you had to chase. It's been here all along, waiting for you to stop thinking long enough to feel it.